Jimmy Talks is an absolute idiot when it comes to the free market, as well as just libertarianism in general. I already made a video about this, but in that video, I didn't actually go through every single one of Jimmy's points. And in this one, that is what I plan to do. You do not need to watch my other video on Jimmy in order to understand this one, but I do advise you do at least after you watch this one. It's titled Groypers Don't Understand Libertarianism. I will be linking it in the description below. With that being said, let's hop straight into it.
I agree with libertarians on the diagnosis, big time. Like, we need sound money. I'm all about precious metals. I'm always talking about it, especially if you follow me on Twitter, you know I am. We need to return to precious metals. The Federal Reserve is a criminal organization. Totally agree. But the libertarian solution of just let the banks do whatever doesn't work in a fiat-based debt economy.
There is no libertarian position that says just let the banks do whatever they want. Banks are still bound by property laws, contract laws, and fraud liability. They also should be bound by market consequences, which now they're not because the government will just bail them out whenever. The way banks work right now isn't a free market. Banks right now just rely on the central banking system and fiat currency, which are both completely against a free market and what most libertarians would support. So yes, Jimmy, you're correct. It would not work in a fiat debt economy. This is because the fiat debt economy is completely structurally distorted. You are criticizing libertarian banking using problems created by a non-libertarian banking system. Modern finance is not laissez-faire. It's a cardinalized system protected by the state. The reason banks can behave irresponsibly is precisely because they are not forced to bear the full consequences of their actions. States prefer fiat credit systems because they allow governments to spend, borrow, and inflate beyond what taxpayers would voluntarily tolerate under hard money.
Banks don't operate on equity anymore. They operate on debt. That is how the whole country works. That's the American economy. It's all ran off of debt with fake paper money. So the banks don't take a hit if they invest into something and the company fails. They don't care. They throw out loans to anyone who wants them, like student loans, mortgages, business loans.
Exactly, and that is a consequence of the fiat central banking system, not a refutation of libertarianism. Because again, this is not something that libertarians advocate for.
Literally any retard ever can get a loan. It's kind of crazy. But they will collect interest off the backs of these people. It doesn't matter how stupid someone is, they can get a loan anyways. That is how banks make their money. So
again, if Ricky Ritardo wants to go out and get a loan and the bank actually gives it to him and he can't pay back that loan, that's his fault and the bank's fault for trusting him with that loan. In a libertarian society, the bank wouldn't get bailed out. They would just lose money because he wouldn't be able to pay it off, which in turn incentivizes them to actually give out loans to people who they know will be able to pay them back. You keep describing problems caused by fiat banking and a central bank backstop and then saying this is what would happen under libertarianism. Banks are only able to become massively debt leveraged precisely because the state stabilizes and guarantees the system when it breaks.
This basically encourages a never-ending debt cycle that enslaves the population. This system does not benefit the small business on Main Street. It benefits the massive conglomerate companies on Wall Street. The banks want to work with the massive companies because it's efficient. They want to work in tandem with the government, and we saw this in 2008. The banks failed and real estate crash. Did the free market punish them? No, the U.S. government stepped in and bailed them out because these companies were just too big to fail.
Again, you're portraying this as though it's something that would happen in a libertarian society and that we live in a free market currently, which we absolutely do not. The words, the free market didn't punish them because the state stepped in, makes sense, but you're portraying it as though we live in a free market currently. The free market didn't punish them because we don't live in a free market.
That is the reality of the system we live in. Libertarians will say, though, that wasn't real capitalism, but that doesn't matter. That is the reality of power.
Jimmy, you are quite literally right now giving completely socialist talking points, which is something that you claim to hate. You claim to hate socialism and love free market capitalism, even though that's just completely not true. Yes, it isn't real capitalism because capitalism cannot exist in a centralized economy. When somebody says that wasn't true capitalism, it's not the same as when somebody says that wasn't communism. And the reason for this is communists, when they say that wasn't real communism, it's because they bake the success of communism into the definition. When a capitalist says that wasn't real capitalism, it's truly because it wasn't real capitalism. Not because it failed, not because this or that, but because it just straight up wasn't what the definition of capitalism is. I think a good way to explain it is when somebody says it's not real socialism or it's not real communism, they're looking at a rotten apple and saying that it's not a real apple because it's rotten. Well, no, it's still a real apple. It's just not able to be eaten. It didn't work in a sense. But when somebody says it's not real capitalism, they're looking at a pear and saying, yeah, it's green and it has a stem and it's roughly shaped like an apple, so it's an apple. But obviously, it's not an apple.
You cannot separate economic power from political power. We need an economic system that favors the small family business and the farmer and just the local guy. And we need to crush the big banking cartel, not give them more freedom to give predatory loans to the American middle class to destroy it into oblivion.
Again, the same problem. You're pointing out the same exact problem, but then just completely misdiagnosing where it came from. The way patent laws and things like that are currently written are not to favor the little guy, and they never were to favor the little guy. Patents are not there so that a big company cannot steal your idea. Patents are there so that a big company can buy up ideas, get the patents, and then have a monopoly over whatever that idea is. Innovation is largely caused and massively accelerated via competition. This is why during the Cold War, there was such a boom in technological advancement, because the United States was competing with the Soviet Union to see who could make the best stuff, who could make the best weapons, who could get to space first, right? All these things that were making people compete. In a free market, this is only amplified even more with now a company makes something, right? Or a guy makes something. Somebody else makes that thing, but better or cheaper. Now they have to figure out how they can innovate that product, the product that they originally made, to stay on their toes and sell more. If I can take the product that you made and make it cheaper and better, why should I not be allowed to just because you're the one that came up with the idea? Allowing for regulation on ideas is basically destroying free speech. I see free speech as not only with just theological concepts or with political concepts, but I also see free speech to do with mechanical concepts and inventions.
Now, this leads us to the issue of borders and the nation itself. This is the biggest rift between myself and libertarians, because libertarians believe in magic dirt theory. They believe that America is just a piece of land with some lines on a map, and that anyone who steps across those lines becomes an American with their new piece of paper. They believe...
No, libertarians just don't believe this. No libertarian I've met, apart from people who LARP as libertarian, like libertarian socialists or anarcho-communists, actually believe this. Libertarians are the most staunch defenders of property law you will ever find, Jimmy. A lot bigger defenders than you, I might say.
Believe in the idea of a propositional nation, like Vivek Ramaswamy would tell you, that as long as you sign a piece of paper and you pay your taxes, you're just as American as a descendant of the Mayflower.
So let me get this straight, Jimmy. Libertarians think that paying taxes is what makes you American. Also, you're talking about the Mayflower. Wasn't the Mayflower literally people stepping off of a boat and onto the dirt and just saying, yep, this is us now? Like literally what you're trying to say doesn't make people part of a country.
That is a lie. Demographics are destiny. People have gotten on my ass about this, and Jimmy, blah, blah, blah. I don't care. That it's just a fact of the matter. Don't hate me. I don't make the rules here, right? Culture is not some abstract concept that's floating in the ether land. It is the biological and historical identity of a specific people. Libertarians refuse to acknowledge that high trust societies like the one America used to be are actually pretty rare. They are also fragile. They are the result of centuries of shared religion, shared blood, and a shared struggle, a shared identity. So when libertarians advocate for open borders because they want the free movement of labor, it's all about economy and materialism to them. They are advocating for the permanent destruction of the right. They will look at a Somalian who got here yesterday and a man whose family fought in the Revolutionary War, and they see two identical economic units. Oh, yeah, that Somalian who got here yesterday, yeah, he should have a gun too. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
It seems Jimmy just keeps doing the exact same thing, finding something that is not a libertarian position and then just saying, oh, it's a libertarian position. He did the same thing in the last video where he was trying to say that libertarians were advocating for state-funded overdose facilities as well as state-funded drugs for drug addicts. This, of course, is absolutely absurd.
But back to the economy part, they're just kind of blind to reality. Third world immigrants from third world countries, they bring third world voting habits and cultures. They vote for big government. They vote for the welfare state. So by cheering for open borders to get cheaper labor for Amazon and Walmart, because it's all about GDP and the economy to them, libertarians are importing the very socialism that they claim to hate. They are selling out their grandchildren's future so that the GDP can go up by 0.5 percentage point.
The idea that libertarians support mass immigration just to raise the GDP is a complete misunderstanding of the libertarian position. A libertarian would argue that the modern state has already destroyed genuine freedom of association. In a true private property society, communities, neighborhoods, businesses, and landowners would be able to decide who is allowed on their property, not a centralized bureaucracy imposing demographic changes from above. What we have now is neither free markets nor freedom of association. We have state-managed migration combined with welfare programs, public schooling, subsidized healthcare, and forced integration through public infrastructure funded by taxpayers. The real issue is not whether immigrants can contribute economically. Of course, many can. The issue is whether a centralized state has the right to forcibly reshape the cultural and demographic character of a nation while forcing existing citizens to absorb the social costs. Hoppe himself argued that importing large populations from incompatible political or cultural backgrounds into a welfare democracy can accelerate the growth of statism because migrants become voting blocks within a redistributive system. So yet again, Jimmy, what we have is you pointing out a problem with democracy and blaming it on libertarians. Anyway, guys, with that being said, I think this video gives you a good idea on just how stupid Jimmy is. I know at the beginning I said I was going to do every single one of his points, but they're kind of just like restating the same thing over and over again, and it's extremely repetitive. It's very annoying. So with that being said, I think that's going to do it for this video. If you did enjoy, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.